Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about the Pakistan-US relations. And interestingly, there was a statement by the Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, and where he said that Pakistan does not want transactional ties with the United States of America. We would prefer to have a closer bond, a better kind of an understanding, so that during the current times we can move forward. But now there are a lot of issues, and the main issue is about the trust deficit. The Americans blame Pakistan and rather they make us the scapegoat as far as their failures in Afghanistan is concerned. Or you talk about the other way, where Pakistan believes that the Americans should have done much more in Afghanistan, and as we all know that stability and peace in Afghanistan is directly related to whatever is happening in Pakistan. So perhaps the powerful countries, especially the Western world, should work together, and that is how things would be normalized. Now, what are the areas where Pakistan can still cooperate with the United States of America? America being the second largest military supplier member of Pakistan. The relationship goes way back in 1947 when the diplomatic relationship started, and there were a lot of ups and downs. But it seems that the Americans have always used Pakistan, whether during the Soviet invasion or perhaps as the non-NATO ally during the current crisis, which lasted for almost 20 years till the time the American forces exited Afghanistan. Now, before I introduce you to our panelists, our production team has prepared a report. Let's watch that first.
Taliban's taking over of Afghanistan after the United States' exit has not only shaken the roots of international arena, but also led the relations between Pakistan and the United States towards many challenging and tricky ebbs and flows. Both the states and their respective representatives repeatedly try to assure that both sides want better bilateral relations. Still, the rapidly unveiling Cold War between the United States and China has made such roadways towards a trustworthy bilateral engagement difficult for both the United States and Pakistan. In this regard, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, while addressing Margala Dialogue Forum 2021, said that Pakistan wants multifaceted ties with the United States that are not susceptible to the vagaries of the regional and international policies. He highlighted the Prime Minister Imran Khan's vision for a shift from geopolitics to geoeconomics. He added that looking towards the future, Pakistan do not want a transactional relationship with the United States. On the other hand, United States Ambassador designated to Pakistan, Donald Blum, while giving a briefing to the Senate committee, asserted that the United States want to enhance economic and commercial ties with Pakistan. He added that he is committed to working for Pakistan's digital economy and intellectual property protection, besides promoting transparent investment. The diplomat stressed that the United States want to build better mutual and bilateral relations between Pakistan and India.
And now to talk about this very important topic, we have with us in our studio on my right is Amir Hussain Saab, who's a senior columnist. Thank you so much, Amir Saab, for your time. And we also have with us Dr. Manzoor Afridi Saab, expert on foreign affairs. Afridi Saab, pleasure to have you on the show. So thank you so much. And on Skype, we have with us Abid Latif Sindhu Saab, who's a senior defense analyst. Sindhu Saab, pleasure to have you on the show, sir. Thank you so much for your time as well. Now, let me start off from you, Amir Hussain Saab. Now, currently, if you look at the overall the understanding or perhaps the misunderstanding between the two countries, there are a lot of areas where we really need to work hard. For example, trust deficit between the two countries, sir. Whether they were cooperating or not, but still there was this trust deficit that was perhaps the major reason and the bone of contention, I would say, sir. And I would say during the last 10 years, especially post 2011, there were three major incidents. One was about this member of the Blackwater, or perhaps an extension of CIA, let me put it this way, Rehman Davis, when he killed the innocent civilians. Number two was another very major incident, and that was about Osama bin Laden in May 2011. And the third, when 24 soldiers were killed in the neighboring area with Afghanistan, close to the Moment Agency, and perhaps the Salala incident, as we all know. I mean, that is something which Pakistan really retaliated for. And now the multiple issues, and then the tension started growing and then making Pakistan the scapegoat regarding the failures in Afghanistan, the latest incident. So these were some major, I would say, happenings or incidents which has brought these two countries, into different directions, or perhaps in thinking that now we need to have a different ideology, or perhaps we could be realigned with other countries like China, for that matter. They have become a strategic partner, whereas the Americans, they were never the strategic partners. They always used you. They still will use you, just like the way they have earlier used certain countries for their own benefit. And in particular in Pakistan. So this was stated not by Pakistan television. Their own former First Lady, Ms. Hillary Clinton, who happened to be the Secretary of State also, on the floor of the House, has admitted this. Let's start off from there, sir. Should we blame Pakistan for this, or should we point our fingers toward the United States of America and their policies?
Well, I think this is a long history of relationships that have sometimes governed by good virtues and intentions, and sometimes they have gone worse. I think the Cold War period was a different dynamics. Pakistan and the United States were ally, and they were fighting different wars in Afghanistan, in the Middle, and then the Soviet invasion in Afghanistan and all that. But I think in 1990s it could have been revisited a long time ago, 30 years ago, but it couldn't happen. Now Pakistan and America has to go beyond the transactional relationship. America is the biggest, largest exporter of Pakistani, products, the exporting market for Pakistani products. There is cultural exchange programs. There are economic ties that must be strengthened. The misfortunate part, as you said, as you put well, that America has always blamed Pakistan for many things that Pakistan was not responsible for. For example, in Afghanistan, we suffered a lot. We lost $450 billion over a period of 10-12 years fight against terror. We also received 3 million Afghan refugees who we took care of without any foreign support. And we had a number of crises that we faced because of this long-term relationship. We suffered, but we never blame Americans for doing that. We said, okay, we will part of this strategic relationship. But the Americans have always blamed Pakistan. Now recently, 350,000 well-equipped Afghan soldiers were just withered away. It was not the Pakistan fault. The American policies were unable to deepen their relationship in the region. And of course, Pakistan is a regional power. Pakistan has a great potential to bring stability in Afghanistan, and Pakistan can be a partner but not an enemy. The way Americans want to use as a scapegoat, looking at Pakistan, that our failure rests with Pakistan, is completely a very, very misperception, because Pakistan has always tried to bring stability in Afghanistan. And still Pakistan, you see the statements of the Foreign Office, you see the statement of Prime Minister, they are saying that we want to establish a multilateral relationship in Afghanistan, we want to see economic stability, we want to see cultural exchanges, we want to see better Afghanistan, where a pluralistic Afghanistan, where power sharing formula is fully functional. And that is the reason that when we look at the role of Pakistan, the international community looks at the role of Pakistan, is very critical for stability in the region. And that is why we are focused, in the Pakistan focus on moving from geopolitics to geoeconomics, because Pakistan has its own interest as a nation state. It has an economic interest. It has to bring stability inside its own borders. It has to focus on its economy, its youth bulge, its growing population, and a number of issues. And I think Pakistan has all the right to establish its relationship in the region with Iran, with China, and smoothing relationship with India even. And all that will happen if we look at the Pak-American relationship in a larger perspective of geoeconomics, rather than focusing on only geopolitics or military relationships. So I think that is the new understanding, this new thinking coming inside Pakistan. And this new thinking also, as you put well, some of the American democrats and think tanks also think that that this new relationship must be redrawn between America and Pakistan.
I think this is high time to redraw and actually to come up with certain solutions also.
Absolutely.
Afridi Sahab, I was in fact reading a story in which one of the US senators, perhaps he was giving an interview to Hindustan Times, and he straight away blamed Pakistan for the killings of the American soldiers, when the exit was taking place. And if you remember that bomb blast, that was carried out by IS, which is a direct threat to Pakistan.
Yes.
How can you blame Pakistan for that? And if, let's suppose if we support the current regime and we want them, if they have taken over and the Americans have run away, perhaps they should be given a chance. There should be some sort of a support for them to bring in stability in the region, and also as far as the Afghan people are concerned, they should be also taken care of. But Afridi Sahab, one thing, the blame game is never going to stop. There are certain senators who recently visited Pakistan, and perhaps a jump start is going to be given to the relationship because they met the two most powerful, I would say, individuals. One was the Prime Minister, the other one was the Chief of Army Staff, and they had separate meetings also. Now, do you think the Americans are in a mood, or perhaps this is their wish to normalize the relationship? Because I won't say it is going to really, erupt like a perfect hunky-dory story, an affair between the two countries, because this relationship has always been very patchy. It has always been a love-hate relationship accepted by the Pakistani decision makers. So the case is with the American policymakers.
I think now ball that is in the court of the United States because America that is in need of such allies where Pakistan can perform the role. Even Pakistan performed for the last 20 years, and all the consequences we have seen here, and mostly, particularly, those are in negative trends. What are our losses and what our economy suffered and all these things. I don't want to go into detail, but I would like to say that now United States should craft its policy towards South Asia, particularly towards Pak-Afghan region, with much consciousness, very
so
cautious.
South Asia or Indo-Pacific, let's define that, because there is a confusion now.
Yeah, here my focus is on South Asia, because Indo-Pacific, there's another concept very much related to South Asia, but not solely that is the mainland of South Asia. I will talk on it later on. Here, United States should learn from the history of the Pakistan and US relations, especially in the last 2 decades, what this relationship has got from that blame game. You rightly mentioned about the 3 very unfortunate incidents, and after that the blame game and all these things, we know very well about it. So it brought fruitful result or not? No, obviously no. So if this blame game continues in future again, where America, I think it's in more need even before, where Taliban, they are in the control of the government, they have very much grip on the government affairs in Afghanistan, where America is not, in a very positive way with People's Republic of China, and also on the other hand with the Russian Federation, where America wants to have strong foothold in the Central Asian republics, where America wants to mend its relationship with Pakistan. So for all these factors, the only way, that is, let's think for a positive relationship. Let's to have a fruitful dialogue with one another, not just blame game, not just for every loss, for every damage, just to have that Pakistan has done it, or if Pakistan had not done it, it would not happen. It is not the way. No doubt that in international relations or in international politics, main thing is interest. But for making interest or to achieve interest, you must have friends, or at least if not friends, you must have normal relations with the states. So to achieve these objectives, what I have mentioned before, America has no way but only positive thinking, positive relationship with all the countries here, and a balanced relationship with the countries, especially I would refer to India and Pakistan in South Asia, and particularly with Pakistan in the case of the Afghan imbroglio.
But now another very important area, and that is about the China factor and the Russia factor. So Russia or Soviet Union, let's put it this way, Cold War era, 60s, 70s, we all know, even perhaps in the late 50s. Now China, it's no more a trade war, sir, it's a Cold War, or the beginning of the Cold War. Prime Minister has been very categorical, and he said we will not be a part of these divisions, and we would not support that, and we would try to make sure that it doesn't exist. Whether Pakistan can do it or not, that is a separate chapter. We have our own issues at hand, and we are going through all that rough patch, I would say. But sir, when the American president, whosoever takes charge, whether it's Mr. Biden or it's Mr. Donald Trump, they would use two names, Russia and China, as their adversaries. And interestingly, sir, Pakistan is a strategic partner with China, and our relationship with Russia is really improving now. The military engagement or the kind of military and naval exercises. And perhaps Russians were the first ones, their commandos went to Cherat and visited. Nobody else ever did that. And combined exercises and, you know, some sort of a positive movement in that right direction. Now, sir, when these two countries are adversaries of the United States of America, and you are being so close to them, because let me put this question to both of you, what do you make out of it?
Well, I think you're very right. The regional dynamics is always evolving, and China is emerging a global power, and nobody denies the fact that there's a new Cold War, as you put it well. I think we have to understand that Pakistan has a future in the region. This region is emerging as one of the leading global, economic hub. China is emerging, Russia is emerging, and Pakistan is improving its relationship with China. Of course, we have a long-term relationship, strategic partnerships and relations, the CPEC and all that, cemented together the larger interests in the region. But also the Russian factor, which is very good and a positive sign that Pakistan and Russia, as you know, they're coming close to each other, understanding each other, and that is also important for the regional stability again. After the exit of Americans from Afghanistan, they have lost the interest in the region. They want to see the scapegoats only. But I think if the Americans want to re-engage in the region, which is an important region, South Asia is a very important region now, Southeast Asia and South Asia, the whole region. So they have to rethink about the whole idea, whole notion of international relations in terms of the new emerging realities in the region. So America is no more a sole superpower now. After the dismemberment of Soviet Union for 10 or 15 years, America was the sole superpower. But now there are regional economies, they are growing fast. Russia is fast growing. China, as you know, is the second largest economy. The Japan is also re-emerging. So I think we have to look at all this new dynamics in the region. Pakistan has to again go beyond the traditional relationship with the West. It has, economic side is important. The trade relationship must be improved. Cultural exchanges must be improved. The new digital economy, which is a huge economy in the future, Pakistan can benefit from the digital technology of the West. But at the same time, Pakistan cannot detach itself from the region, and Russia also thinks that, and China thinks that, and even now India is thinking, though India has a fascist regime, I think once it goes, then in India there will be a realization in many political circles that in the region, if we want to create some EU type of economic bloc in the region, we have to work together, and we have to create a larger economy that will help all the regional states to make big economic bargains in the era of globalization. We have now unilateral, one-sided new liberal globalization, and we have to create a counter narrative, economic narrative and a political
counter narrative. I think that is something very important. At the end of the day, sir, whatever is in your interest should matter more to you rather than what is more important to United States of America. Earlier, we have been always following, whatever they have been telling us to do. Now, so looking at the current situation now, they have also talked about the new ambassador's appointment, and perhaps this could be the restart of a better relationship. Because in the past, the blame game was on. I mean, look at the kind of statements issued by the generals, and whether we like it, Afridi Saab, or we don't, the reality is that America still has a lot of clout on the globe. And when you talk about the Western world in particular, Europe, Australia, certain ally countries like Japan, India, Korea, for that matter, they have their influence there as well, sir. Because they would put sanctions on you. Chinese haven't put sanctions on anybody, either the Russians, rather the enforcement of those sanctions are on these two countries, Russia and China. Whatever the counter statements are, but that's the reality, sir.
Yes, United States, no doubt that it is the sole superpower, and by every mean, by trade, by technology, resources, by global access to every corner of the world, by nuclear technology, by traditional weapons, conventional weapons, by all means, United States has access to almost every corner of the world. So in this case, China or Russia, of course, can't compete, but with the emerging economies and with their emerging political role in the world by Russia or China or even the BRICS countries, Brazil or India or South Africa, or even some other regional economies in the world. So now we can say that it is loose unipolarity in the world if we talk in the context of the subject discipline of international relations. So there is a growing or an emerging multipolar world system of the international politics. But on the other hand, the United States is also not in a position just to order any nation do it and that will do. No, China is not ready for it, Russia is not ready for it, and even to some extent the Central Asian republics, where they are mainly under the political influence of Russia and economic influence of China, they will definitely would say no to US. Yes, their normal relationship is there, right? Yes, there are also some bases. There is also a kind of defense relationship between the US and Tajikistan or Uzbekistan. But if that's called the 100% just the obedience or the dictation they have to accept from the US, I think that would not happen. Another thing, there are some signs and symbols, what Amir Hussain Saab talked about, the counter narrative that is in the shape of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Already the Western scholars, they have termed it as the NATO of the East, as a counterproductive or an alliance which can later on even it can be transformed into a full-fledged military alliance. Anything can happen in international politics. So this is a kind of counter narrative from the Chinese side and also from the Russia. Another thing that is in the shape of BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, very huge project, a bunch of projects, and that is spread over the
but
three
that
continents.
Is still in a transition.
In a transition, yes. At least at this stage, what I mean that United States must be very cautious about crafting its policies. If it, of course, if it doesn't, bring some negative results for Washington in near future, it will damage the image of Washington, of the US, in the shape that more countries here in Asia, they will look towards Russia.
So the problem
and China.
is that the Americans or their allies, I mean, the allies are forced to be an ally, unfortunately, sir. Yeah. Look at Turkey, a NATO member, but not a part of the European Union, and yet influence. The moment they want to buy the S-400 missile system from Russia, the Americans have stopped giving them the engines for their helicopters, and a lot of pressure has been put on them, and look where the lira has gone. You talk about India, again the American pressure on the Indians not to buy the S-400 from the Russians, and then we see General Ravit being killed in a plane crash. So a lot is possible and a lot is happening. So let's go to Sindhu Saab now. Abid Saab, Assalamu Alaikum, and thank you so much for taking out your time and being a part of a show. Since we are talking about the Pakistan-US relationship, sir, which is currently very rocky, and unfortunately the kind of relationship these two countries have enjoyed earlier, whether the time of the Ayub Khan era, or you talk about the post-80s when Ziaul Haq Saab was in power, or perhaps when General Musharraf was in charge during this invasion of Afghanistan by the Americans. So whenever they needed us, they always needed us for a certain job. Whether to put a check on the Russians by taking our the Air Force bases, like Badab for that matter, spying on the Russians, or you talk about the invasion of Afghanistan. Perhaps again they needed us for logistic support. Prior to that, when Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, we created Mujahideen along with them, and now we are suffering because a lot of new phenomena has erupted which never existed 35-40 years ago, sir. Why to be a part of that campaign which the Americans want for themselves, and later on they have always used you as a tissue paper, and they have not once, not twice, I can give you so many other occasions also. So still we want to improve ties, so that means that the influence of the Americans, that is there, and it's a reality at the end of the day.
Actually, we are living in a post-truth era, and history era, and in an era in which the narrativity is defined by geoeconomics. So once we see that the relationship of Pakistan and USA has a very traverse history of ups and downs, and this was solely as defined by Pakistan. Once the 60s, we had a good relations with the US. We had a good military relations. In the 70s, we started upheavals. In 80s, 80s and 90s, we were the most sanctioned state of the world. So, this defines a twist of different groups of different colors.
Sindhu Saab, I'm so sorry, but sir, I can't hear you properly because you're breaking up. I would just request my producer to either, in fact, get in touch with you again, or perhaps should take you over the phone, because there is a lot of disruption, unfortunately. I hope we are with you in a few seconds. Well, talking about the issue regarding the Pakistan-US relationships, unfortunately, whether we should straight away admit it or not, sir, but this relationship, I believe, is going to continue the way it is, or perhaps it is going to get worse in the current circumstances, sir. And they also realize, and thank God finally we have also realized, that this is not going to work out like this. At the end of the day, if you remember when Senator Hillary Clinton was visiting Pakistan in the capacity of the United States Secretary of State, and one of the women, she in fact asked her a very pertinent question, and she said, Pakistan-US relationship is like the relationship of a daughter-in-law and mother-in-law, and you've always been a very strict mother-in-law. And she laughed, but she admitted that that's correct.
Yeah.
And I think she is one of those individuals who've served at the most powerful post, and also admitted that perhaps, yes, we have abandoned Pakistan before, and we should not repeat that mistake again. But this time they have not abandoned us. They have started blaming us also for all their failures. So it's a step ahead. So quick comment before we get hold of Mr. Sindhu, sir.
No doubt, I strongly believe in this, and I completely agree with it. And this thing, I think it has been happening since Pakistan became alliance partner of the US back in 1950s. And throughout the history of the Cold War, even Soviet Union was also became a player in this here in the region of South Asia. Now we have what to do, that we have not just to make Russia or China or any other country, whether major or minor, we should not make it angry for the sake of the United States. What we have done in the Cold War politics.
Why do we want to travel in two boats, sir, when we know it is not going to work out?
Yeah, one is this, and second, we have not to be in future, if there is something about the alliance politics, we should not be a member of the alliance, and we should learn from the Chinese example that throughout the history of China, China was a member of alliance only with the Soviet Union, and that was I think only for 6 or 7 years, when there was a split between People's Republic of China and the Soviet Union back in 1956, when they signed the Friendship Alliance Treaty in 1950. And once when I was in China for my research, I asked a Chinese scholar that why you are not going to sign, any alliance treaty with any country, even there are some very good friends of you like Pakistan. So they said that we have bad experience, and once in our life we have signed once the treaty, alliance treaty with Russia. So after that we decided that we will do friendship, strategic partnership, but not the alliance.
So at the end of the day,
Pakistan
your
should also
own agenda, your own narrative, your own philosophy matters more. What is good for you? So we've been once again joined in by Abid, Latif, Sindhu sir. Sindhu sir, I hope this time you can hear me clearly, right, sir?
Yeah. I can hear you.
Okay, please, sir. I would like you to carry on, sir. Please go ahead.
Sorry for the earlier glitch. This is in 21st century. There are three things which defines everything: globalization and the technological disruption. So I think I was victim to that. So I was saying that this era is post-truth and post-history era, in which the narrativity is defined by geoeconomics. And we have to admit that there is only one, even till now, there is only one superpower. Rest, the China and the other global powers are emerging. And, it is, the world order is defined by the superpower. So we cannot relegate the status of the US altogether. We have to strike a balance. The problem is that over a period of time, over these decades, once we had very good relations with the US in 60s, then in 70s, after the fall of Dhaka, we were slightly in a shadow with the US relations. Then again in 80s and 90s, we were the most sanctioned nation in the world. So the problem is that the US or the policymakers or the people who are the strategic policymaker or the strategic elite of the US, I think they don't consider the culture as one of the proponent of defining the progressiveness in the international relation with other countries. They just want to see and state or take a state as a surrogate or a client state or a rentier state. Whereas Pakistan, despite everything, despite every geopolitical pressure, always tried to help US and always tried to maintain equilibrium in the region vis-a-vis its neighbors and China and all the other sectors also, which includes the Muslim Ummah also. So I think to redefine the relationship, US has to hyphenate India vis-a-vis the relationship with Pakistan and dehyphenate Afghanistan as far as the chaos and the anarchy or the disturbance in Afghanistan is concerned, because Pakistan itself and we ourselves are a victim to whatever is happening in Afghanistan. And over a period of time for about 2 decades, US could not solve the problem of Afghan question, because they said earlier, that they are going to reform the Afghan society in terms of politics and in terms of sociology.
I totally agree with you, Sindhu sir. I would like to put a question here.
Yeah.
The question is that ever since I've been in media, or perhaps even ever since I've been a student of politics, I would say that's in the name of democracy, in the name of the larger interest of the people of that particular country, the Americans tried to liberate so many countries, sir, starting from the Far Eastern countries, coming down to the Middle Eastern countries, whether it's Iraq or Afghanistan or it's Syria. You talk about the 2011 so-called the Arab Spring phenomena, the way they supported it, and eventually what happened in Benghazi, if you remember, in Libya, when their ambassador was killed, and 110% people blamed Miss Hillary Clinton. She was the Secretary of State. Which country have they liberated, sir, in the name of democracy? They have destroyed. They have used those countries as their firing range. You yourself have served in military. Sir, they have tried their level best to make sure that all the bombs they have in fact invented over a period of time, whether it's the mother of all bomb or it's the atomic bomb they have used in Japan, not once, not twice. I mean, what is going on? Somebody has to put a check. I mean, yes, we do understand that Americans, they are a superpower, they use countries. Even NATO is not at all happy, sir. Countries, I mean, who were in serious economic turmoil, they were forced to put their 2% of GDP, countries like Greece for that matter, to buy the American equipment to be a part of NATO. I mean, what kind of a philosophy is this, sir?
Yeah, you're right. Actually, Americans, that was what I was trying to say, that Americans, they don't have a regard for culture. They think that everything, to understand about the Eastern countries, they have to refer to the Orientalism of Edward Said. Actually, it is not the Orientalism which they have to. This is the Eastern culture, which is very different. We have other norms and values, and we once we engage into friendship, we respect and expect from the other country or the other nation or the other government that they have to stand by with you whenever there is a need arise. So I think that because of the appointment or the designated new ambassador, Mr. Donald Bloom, I think there's going to be a change, because already in his, during his statement to the Foreign Committee, Committee of Foreign Selection Committee, he has already pointed out, he has given 5 pointers in which he says that with engaging with Pakistan, the number one priority would be the geoeconomics, then is the Afghanistan situation, and the question of terrorism, climate change, and the relations with Pakistan and India. So I think there is a reset. Without a reset, U.S. is not going to, will not be able to actually engage successfully with any country of the region, and particularly will not be able to play its role in Afghanistan in any sort of by any definition, the word of the definition. So I think this new orientation and this new realization is because of the change in the global reset, and U.S. has to believe and has to give this a chance and apply the new norms of the international politics, which actually depends upon the new realities of the geoeconomics.
Now, another point coming to you, Amir Hussain Saab. Donald Bloom, I mean, he seems to be a reasonable person, but a reasonable person cannot function unless and until he has the so-called the Ashirwad from the Pentagon, sir. Yeah. I remember Cameron Munter. The moment he issued a statement, I mean, which was very sensible, he was kind of sacked. Other than that, I still remember the lady, her name was Robin Raphael. She also served as the ambassador to Pakistan, and unfortunately her husband died in that unfortunate incident in 1988 on the 17th of August, along with General Muhammad Ziaul Haq. Now my point is, sir, they were just compensated. Reality is totally different. I mean, the ambassador, no matter how strong the ambassador is, still has to follow the foreign policy of that particular country.
Absolutely.
Now, sir, the gentleman says, okay, we'll be talking about climate, we'll be talking about terrorism issue, but we also want to improve our ties. Let's identify the areas where the improvement can practically be seen, and where people really should believe that, yes, this is what Americans are doing at the moment, sir.
Well, there were 2 important books written in 1990. One was The End of History and Last Man by Francis Fukuyama. Another was The Clash of Civilization by Huntington. So all American post-Cold War political philosophy was built around these 2 ideas, that American supremacy will prevail in the world. And after that, once the American started to they did the Washington Consensus, and then after that, it was a huge new liberal onslaught in the world, and they thought that they will bring democracy. I mean, the American empire was moving ahead with an ideology which was the Cold War ideology, larger, big narratives, big political, mega narratives. And as Mr. Sindhu said, that this was the time of ideological debates. Now we live in a world of post-ideology. Now you see, the American supremacy and American hub of power has been completely decentralized across the world. There is no centrality of power in the world. is it economic power or you can political power? American big corporations are investing in Middle East, investing in Far East, they are in Philippines, they are in Bangladesh, they are in Thailand. You know, the economic power is diffusing everywhere because there is a big market, the middle class is emerging across the world. Now what needs to be done? This in South Asian context, in the context of Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, in China, and the Southeast Asian and South Asian region, the Americans have to rethink their old conventional wisdom of history and the clash of civilization. Now the new reality is that the world is emerging as a decentralized place with a multitude of power hubs across the world. And if you want to create an impact, the global impact on the economic front, on political front, on diplomatic front, on environmental front, then you have to create a coalition which goes beyond military interventions. In what they did in Vietnam, what they did in Middle East, what they did with many other countries, with Chile in 1973, and in Latin America, that will not going to work in 21st century because they have to rethink. And Pakistan, that's why Pakistan, when Pakistan says that in this region, Pakistan as a nation state would opt for a multitude of options. Well, we can go.
For example,
we can go back to our drawing room, is a drawing board, and recalculate our relationship with America. One is the trade area where Pakistan and America can do better. In education investment, the Pakistan and America can do better. But Pakistani youth, the 220 million people, big market, it's emerging middle class market. So American can think of using Pakistan as a market, and Pakistan can think America is a future for our young generation, for Silicon Valley, for the universities, for modern technology and digital technology. So this kind of relationships are needed to be cemented, and also then it will not restrict Pakistan.
We need to look for common areas actually.
Yeah, the common areas: digital technology, the trade, and the cultural exchange, and also looking at the new realities coming from the CPEC, and other opportunities. The American corporate businesses are in China. They are not detached from China. You see that this in the new globalization, the American corporates are investing in China. They will never want to see any instability in the region to run their businesses and run their gigantic economic interest. So that's why there is no unipolar world, even not a bipolar world, it is a multipolar world. In the multipolar world, you have to create 2-3 different calculations. One is how to build bridges for economic integration and economic interdependence. The second is political interdependence, and the third is to coming together for a larger stability so that the markets start running, the economy gets going, and in the post-COVID world we need a strong market, strong economy, strong stability.
All right, so last minute and quick comment. Areas of divergence seem to be more, areas of convergence are less. United States and America, sir.
I think areas of convergence are more. As I talked before, that America now needs more here to focus on the South Asia. So that's about the attention, it's about focus. If United States will do the mistake, not only the mistake, but even blunder, not to focus here in a positive way, not to just mend the relationship with Pakistan and other countries of the region, then of course much destruction we can see in future, even bigger than what we have suffered from for the last 2 decades, not only us but the entire region. So I think convergence points are more. Now US has to invest on Iran, also to look in a positive way towards Pakistan, also even through Pakistan, through this BRI or specifically the China-Pakistan economic corridor.
So, but BRI and all this OBER concept or CPEC is perhaps very much on the paper, because if this happens, this is what we can have in the future. But sir, if it doesn't happen, which most likely it won't because of the American influence, things would be very difficult, because Americans do understand how to make things difficult for any country. Look the way they are doing with the Afghan people. I mean, they came here to liberate them. From whom? From the Taliban. Again, after spending 20 years, $2.2 trillion, they have ended up creating more mess if this is how the Americans think, I mean, then, God bless America, honestly speaking. Coming to you, Colonel Saab, last quick comment on the relationship and how to move forward. 1 minute, sir.
Yeah. Amir Hussain sir very rightly said that this was the clash of civilization. I would say, as you were referring, instead of addressing the clash of civilization, they created a clash within the civilization by destroying almost all the Middle Eastern countries. So, but I think, this is my apprehension, and this is, my gut feeling, that now they have realized, because this type of geopolitics, which they had been playing for decades and for, with no result at all, a zero-sum game altogether, I think they have realized that this won't work. And in this era of globalization and geoeconomics, they have to, I think, engage with the nations in a very meaningful manner, in which they have to respect the aspirations, the culture, and the political lineages of the country, the other country also.
Thank you very much, Sindhu Saab, for your comments. And gentlemen, thank you so much for your participation in the show, sir. And that's all we have for this hour. I'll see you, inshallah, tomorrow at 8:05. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.